Some of you were here for that lecture, some of you weren't, okay? But the pleasure center of your brain is like, this is kind of hard to see here, but this is rough drawing of the brain, okay? You have the neocortex, which is the outer part, the thing that separates us from the animals. It lets us have reasoning, you know, emotional control, we can logic, your speech, everything is up in there. The cortex down here is where all of your like automatic functions are, like digestion, breathing, you know, all the kind of things you don't have to think about. But your pleasure center is also in your cortex here too. And anything that's, anytime that you drink or use drugs, you stimulate your pleasure center more than anything that you just do naturally on your own, okay? So the chemical that's released in your brain, do you remember what the chemical is anytime that you drink? Dopamine, right, okay? And your brain doesn't like extra dopamine floating around in it. People who are schizophrenic and out of touch with reality, like I used to work in the Park Center, they would come in and like, if somebody came in and said, see that screen, Chris, it's talking to me. And I'd go, oh, really? It wouldn't be turned on, right? And I'd go, really? I said, and there's a question they teach you in graduate school to ask people to see if they're really crazy or not. And you say, is there any possibility that could not be true? And they go, no, I'm right. That is talking to me and it's telling me to do things and do whatever. You go, oh, you're a little crazy, okay? You need some medication and to get hospitalized, right? We need to stabilize you, all right? So that's another sign too, like when if you're ever dating anybody, and like I had a guy tell me one time, he said, you know, because I didn't know that when I married Mrs. Right, it meant I always had to be wrong. He says, you can't win with somebody that always has to be right. All you can do is be wrong, because she was a total narcissist. And narcissists are people that like, it's all about me, right? Like people that are in the active addiction look narcissistic because, you know, addiction drives you to just keep feeding itself, right? But when we sober up, we actually feel guilty. That's why we have 2 whole steps on making amends, right? Steps 8 and 9, where we kind of go, man, I feel bad about the things that, like, if you really knew me, you wouldn't like me that much right now. Because I did things in my addiction that, like, I don't even want to talk about. We actually feel guilty. So there's 2 whole steps on making amends. Narcissists and antisocial people, when they sober up, they go, so, sorry I hurt you, but I had to do what I got to do. And when they sober up, they still do whatever they got to do. They don't have empathy. They don't feel like other people do, okay? And she was a total narcissist, because he told me once, I think I really miss her. And I said, really? Because the last time you saw her, she stabbed you and put you in the gut and put you in the hospital for a month. She's not just crazy, she's mean too. Because you can be crazy but not mean, right? I said, she's mean too. He goes, yeah, well, maybe I missed what I wanted the relationship to be. And all that time and money I put into it, and not her. And I said, yeah, she's not a nice person. She told the judge in court, the judge said, like, why did you stab him? And she said, well, I didn't like what he had to say to me. And the judge said, what? And she said, yeah, if he just didn't lip off, you know, or like, you know, just whatever, I wouldn't have had to stab him. She says, oh, so that's a good enough reason to stab somebody. You're like, you are crazy, right? You enjoy hurting people. So there are people like that in this world that actually enjoy hurting people, okay? When we sober up, we feel bad. And part of what drives us is that, remember, like, anytime that you release extra dopamine in the brain, your pleasure center grows, right? It gets bigger. So it has to expand. It sends out all of these little neurons, these little dendrites. So like if you have more dopamine released across here, it has to absorb all of it because it doesn't like all that floating around. So if you only go out and have like one drinking episode, it gets bigger, but within a day or two, it'll go back to its normal size, okay, for like a social drinker or something like that. After a while, what happens is that your pleasure center starts to expand and get bigger like that. Okay, and it stays big because if you're constantly drinking and using, if you're like me, like I was a daily user, okay, so for a long time, and your brain just stays bigger because it says, I trust you that you're going to keep using, okay, and then all of a sudden if you say, I'm going to quit, it takes how long for this to go back to normal? Do you remember?
2 years.
Up to 2 years, okay? Depending on how long anywhere from 3 months up to 2 years for your brain to go back to its normal size, depending on the type of drug you use and how long, okay? Alcohol releases 100% more dopamine than normal every time that you drink, okay? Marijuana, pot releases 500% more than normal, okay? Opiates, like, ever know what opiates are? Like pain medication, right? Okay, like OxyContin, Vicodin, heroin, you know, anything like that, okay? Releases 750 to about 1,000% more, okay? Any INE drug, cocaine, methamphetamine, okay, you know, anything else along those lines, okay, releases anywhere from 1,000 to 2,000% more, depending on how you use it. Crack cocaine, up to 2,000% more. Smoking it, anytime you smoke a drug, it's much faster because it's direct route into, you know, the only way faster is like shooting up, right? Okay, so 2,000% more dopamine floating around your brain. So that's why you can get totally late stage addiction with crack cocaine, like after 9 months. You'll look like a person that's been drinking for 50 years. Your brain can look like that. Your pleasure center can look that big. Okay, so you know, I always loved when I worked in inpatient, like all the crack cocaine addicts came in and said, "You don't even know addiction, you alcoholics. I'm backing the U-Haul up and selling all my appliances, right? I'm doing things that like you never did, or whatever." And I go, "Don't tell a late-stage alcoholic that it's easier to quit. It just took them longer for their brain to get their pleasure center that big, right? Okay, it just took them 50 years to get where you got in 9 months." Okay, so it still feels the same. You ever met a late-stage alcoholic that just keeps drinking in spite of whatever? Like, I mean, really, like old, like guys I've seen like that they just, you know, and women in their 50s usually. Okay, because women don't live that much. Women get sicker a lot faster. Okay, women usually die in their 40s if they're really late-stage alcoholics because they bleed out faster. They just, their bodies can't handle it as quick as well as men can. So they just tend to like get, their livers just give out on them quicker, and their hearts too and everything. Okay, so it takes 2 years for this. So if you look on that sheet here, this is post-acute withdrawal, okay? Acute withdrawal is the actual physical withdrawal from your drug. Acute withdrawal takes anywhere from 3 to 30 days, depending on the drug of choice that you have, okay? Alcohol withdrawal, they say what, like 3 to 10 days? Usually to get through the actual initial physical withdrawal from alcohol. They always say like nicotine is like 7 days, 7 to 10 days for the actual first initial physical withdrawal. Okay, so the only type of withdrawal you can die from, do you know the only drugs you can die from withdrawal? Alcohol, and what else? Nope. No, you'll feel like you're gonna die with heroin, right? Okay, heroin, opiate withdrawal, you'll feel like you're gonna die. You won't die from it though. Okay, nope. You'll be depressed. Because usually the first acute withdrawal, whatever the drug is that you used, it has the opposite rebound effect. So like, you know, people that are like addicted to Xanax, like when they get off of it, man, they're like even more panicky, right? More anxious and things. So they were taking it and they go, "I gotta have it." And I go, "I know you feel like that because you're having the rebound from it." Cocaine, like I used to go out on like meth binges for like a week. That depression afterwards, and you sleep for how long? Then you wake up depressed and you just, you know, that it's the opposite effect usually, that depression even greater down that way. People who quit drinking have a hard time sleeping at night. You know, there's a lot of insomnia, a lot of that initially, especially in the first physical withdrawal. So benzodiazepines, like all of the tranquilizers, like Xanax, Valium, you know, all that kind of stuff, and alcohol, they're the only things that you can die from in physical withdrawal. Okay, in the old days, you know, when they used to go out on 12-step calls, like before they had Xanax and Valium and things like that, you know what they used to take with them to like get people to the hospital so they wouldn't die from alcohol withdrawal? Grain alcohol. They used to take it with them and say, "Here, keep drinking." And then when they're in the hospital, they gave them grain alcohol slowly, less and less and less over the week to get them through the withdrawal process so they wouldn't die. Because if you just stop it, what happens is that it's like putting a spring on your blood pressure and your respiration and your pulse and all that kind of stuff. And when you quit, just stop by yourself. That's how Amy Winehouse died. Alcohol withdrawal. Okay? Late stage alcoholic, tried to quit real suddenly, boom, she had a stroke. Okay? And a heart attack. So what happens is it's like taking a weight off a spring. And you know, I had a guy in my office in Park Center one time. He came in and he was like sitting in my office and he's just sitting there sweating, right? And his face is purple and his ears are almost black, right? And like he had red hair, so he was like the whitest dude I ever met. But he was like, he looked like he had a sunburn and his ears were black. And I said, I know it's hot outside, but did you just run over here or what? He says, no. He says, you know, I said, what's your drug of choice? He said, alcohol. And I said, how much you drinking? He goes, well, I drink a fifth a day keeps the shakes away, and 2/5 just helps me feel normal, right? So he's really late stage, right? Okay, so that's pretty typical for a really late stage alcoholic. So I said, when's the last time you drank? It was 3 in the afternoon. He said, last night around 8. I said, holy shit, don't move, right? Don't move. And I went, we got the nurse, and he was 210 over 140. His blood pressure was that high. And I said, whoa. I said, don't move. We got a stretcher. We took him right over to the hospital. And he had to be on Valium for a week, right? And then they slowly take you down. They titrate you down to get you safely through withdrawal, medical detox. A third of people who still try to withdraw by themselves, they say either alcohol or benzodiazepines wind up dying from a heart attack or a stroke. So you know, a lot of doctors prescribe a lot of benzodiazepines, right? Like Xanax, Valium, Ativan, you know, all those are the kind of drugs like that to help people that have like post-traumatic stress disorder, panic disorder, those kind of things too. And we used to try to educate the doctors all the time. We'd say, listen, can we try some other things like Remeron, some other kind of antidepressants or some other drugs that don't Xanax is basically, they say, like 2 molecules on the chemical chain away from being alcohol. It's a dry form of alcohol. It's alcohol in a pill. You know, people go, I feel so much better afterwards. And I said, yeah, if you took a couple shots, you would too. You know what I mean? So it's the same thing. It affects the body the same way. So those are the only things you can die from.